We'll go ahead and call this meeting of Rules, Charter Review, Ethics, and Council Operations Committee to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Dan Brady.
Present.
Ellen Connolly.
Present.
Dave Greenspan.
Here.
And we did receive a note that Dale Miller was not going to be able to come. Unfortunately, he was in a car accident, but he's okay. And I believe Sunny Simon is on her way.
Okay, thank you. We have the minutes from the meeting of April 5th that have been presented. They were just presented to us today, so I'll give the committee a minute to review the minutes, see if there are any amendments or adjustments. And March is here as well. All right, we'll do those in two separate motions. We'll start with April 5th. We have a motion to adopt. Second. Dan. All right, I'll second. Any opposition to the motion in the second? Hearing none, the motion to adopt the April 5th minutes has been approved. The other minutes we need to approve are the minutes of March 15th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of March 15th? So moved. I'll second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, the motion passes. I want to just have some comments here from the chair. This actually is a departure from our previous meetings where we've talked about either ethics or the Inspector General, or we've even had folks come and present to us on campaign finance. This actually falls under I would consider the council operations component of our committee. And one of the things that I was interested in talking about early on was a way for us to streamline, first of all, our council meetings. And the initial discussion started with some form of electronic voting. And then as we met with Highland and the folks from Granicus, they actually have a product that far exceeds my initial expectations when it came to not only council operations, but to transparency in government. And so I asked them to come and do a presentation on their software, which they're going to do. But before we do that, Linda Mayer, who was on the Transition Advisory Group for Ethics, has handed a transition work group recommendation, and she asked to speak before the Granicus presentation. So if you don't mind, I'd like Ms. Mayer to come and just speak on this recommendation.
Thank you very much. Without knowing exactly what's going to be in your presentation, I noticed it on the website and thought this pertains to the second recommendation which our work group made to the county council, not the code of ethics, but it has to do with the enforcement of it, and particularly the program called One Stop Transparency, which is just a catchword, but it kind of sums up the idea, and it may touch on what the presentation is today. We got this idea from the campaign finance work group under Mr. Mason, which we attended occasionally. And we found out from Ohio Citizen Action and Catherine Terser that there is a wonderful website at the Secretary of State's office and also the Legislative Office for Ethics Commission. I don't have the name exactly. It's on the handout I gave you. And they have this transparency program already in operation. And so there are people who have done this. And there are tech firms, and I don't know about Granicus. Maybe they have done it or know how to do it. But it's you know, in the Code of Ethics, which you have now passed, it mandates a lot of forms and disclosures and reports and registries. And they would normally all land in a different place, and they might land in a dusty file cabinet. So having them online and then having them searchable and cross-referenceable and in one place would be a marvelous, great thing that would enhance the ethics code, which you already passed. So when you look over this proposal, which was which was turned in last September. It presumes that there is an ethics board, so just ignore that part, or put in its place the either the Human Resource Commission or the Inspector General's office. It could be housed in either one of the two places. Keep in mind, and maybe as you listen to their presentation, and I do, it may turn out that there's some overlap here and that some really good outcomes could take place. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're ready to, I don't know, who's going to present? Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. I'm Jack Melnikoff with Granicus. I appreciate everybody being here today to take a look at what we've already discussed with Cuyahoga County on several occasions. Thank you again to some of your partners, Highland in particular, that's brought us here today. My name is Jack, as I said. I'm the sales representative from Granicus. I'm also accompanied by Tao Hill, who's the VP of Sales and also specializes in enterprise solutions. So who is Granicus? Granicus was founded 11 years ago. We had a mission to change the way citizens interact with government. We work with over 800 clients across the country in all 50 states at every level of government. Why in particular are we here to work with Cuyahoga County? Well, Granicus has a fully managed solution that creates further traceability, accountability, and transparency through an effective public record while helping reduce the impact on the county staff. So through our previous discussions, we realized that you guys had a lot of goals and initiatives. It seemed like the staff was really starting to have a big plate full of different things that they were starting to work on and becoming a little bit more overwhelmed. So hopefully some of the tools here today will be able to accomplish your goals, but also further the ability for the county staff to be able to accomplish them. In our previous conversations, some keynotes that we took away. The clerk office, as I had said before, was starting to get a little bit overwhelmed with the workload of the current processes. So again, we'll take a look at those. There's also very little searchability, as already previously mentioned, with the agenda, the minutes, and the video, as far as being cross-linked and be able to find the information that you're looking for effectively. It's a little difficult to be able to track legislation. There was a few different examples of this, but most importantly, the motions, votes, and the notes are not currently right now online. Although the voting, and we're going to show you actually a voting tool later on today, is taking place as far as a rotation standpoint, we were trying to find a further way to hopefully enhance the way that you guys are able to currently vote. Like I said, we've worked with over 800 government agencies across the country, but specifically, I think we have a great story around helping to build community trust within the community itself. We have a great study that we'll share with you with the City of New Orleans. We've also done similar work with Birmingham, as well as Memphis and Shelby County down in Tennessee. And we'll take a look at a few of those live examples today. So what exactly is Cuyahoga looking for as far as from a solution standpoint? Traceability for all votes. So not only would you be able to find the votes, but you'd actually be able to see what the vote was on a particular item, as well as taking a look at the history of a specific elected official if you would like to for a specific vote. Also searchability, as we touched upon, for the agenda and the minutes document. A voting system that would allow you to, again, not compromise any of the different votes, although the fact that you guys already currently have that rotation system in place. System for the council chair, again, getting into the effectiveness of a public meeting and running that meeting itself. For the chair to be able to recognize speakers. When we were talking, those are some of the different things that you guys wanted the ability to be able to keep a record of the public speakers, as well as possibly an electronic signing up for the public speaking. It was a very hard to manage process today, and hopefully we can bring some technologies to enhance that process moving forward. Software to reduce the minutes annotation process, again, speaking again to the staff itself, as well as public displays and enhancing the overall webcasting solutions you guys currently have. So So what Granicus offers from a solution standpoint is, first of all, the open platform. This is the foundation to which Granicus builds its foundation for you, for your solution. The open platform is a completely unlimited solution, giving you the ability to not only post unlimited amounts of events and public meetings online without having to worry about an investment going up, but also that's based on an indefinite retention schedule, so that you don't have to worry about ever really truly filling anything up. It also gives you the ability to communicate with other existing systems. So as we know today, you guys are working with other systems as well. Based on our open architecture, we give you the ability to now be able to integrate those systems seamlessly to work off of one platform. And then finally, leveraging again those 800 clients across the country gives us the ability to share content such in a non-meeting standpoint for you to be able to not necessarily have to generate resources to creating public service announcements, any different regional messages or national messages that might be beneficial for Cuyahoga County to use. You can leverage those counties by creating that open platform. Once we have our webcasting solution online, we have now the Government Transparency Suite, which is going to give us that different keyword searchability of that webcasting solution. So not only now do we have our media content online, but it's searchable, it's indexable, just as we had talked about before. We've also talked about creating that two-lane highway. As I said before, our mission is to enhance the way citizens interact with government. And through some of your goals, it's trying to engage some of the different citizens to get some more of that productive thought back into the elected officials in an efficient manner that does not require the staff's time. Within the Citizen Participation Suite, again, which we'll demonstrate for you, gives you the ability to not only provide the citizens with information, but also get their responses or get their productive thought back into you in an efficient manner. The Meeting Efficiency Suite is now going to give us the ability to allow the clerk's office to create their minutes in a very efficient manner. So kind of piggybacking on creating those different index points and the searchability within that same system that Tao is going to demonstrate for us. Now all the actions and everything else that's been created during that meeting itself is going to be able to not only allow the clerk's office to hopefully finish a lot of the minutes before the meeting takes place or before the meeting ends, but also afterwards to be able to export this information to a Microsoft Word document and be able to efficiently work and finish up that process, hopefully as seamlessly as possible. And the final piece of that minutes annotation process is the voting touchscreen, which is sitting in front of Tao here today. Within this touchscreen, we're going to be able to solve the problem as far as being able to call speakers, being able to view an agenda and follow up on different supporting materials that you might want to be able to view during the meeting itself, as well as any of the different actions that take place as far as motions or votes. Those will all be interacted and transported back into the clerk's process so that she now has the ability to automate that particular part of her minutes process. And so finally, just as a big overview, you know, Cuyahoga County is looking to do a lot. We're looking at, so far, we've already discussed today, the open platform, which is that foundation, the government transparency to, once we do have that webcasting solution, we have the ability to search through it and find the information a little bit more effectively, the citizen participation, but also, just as it noted, down the road, if there's any need as far as like a training management, we are here to help as well. With that being said, just to give a big overview, I know that kind of gave a little bit, a lot to chew on there. That's a big overview of who we are, what we're able to actually help accomplish, what our background is as far as what we've understood so far. I want to open it up for any initial questions, and then we're going to look at a live example. Is there any questions at the particular point in time? No? Okay. All right, I'm going to kick it over to Tao, who's going to give you a live demonstration of some of the particular clients that we believe show exactly what it is that we've worked with before, and it also is noted that we've worked with your new CIO in the past down at Broward County. They are a new client of ours. We've gone through deployment. He might be able to provide some resources for you to be able to actually engage to find out how that process went through. They're very happy so far, and we're glad to hopefully be working with you again here shortly. Tao?
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, that's not the presentation. That's Jack's little kid.
He's
Hey there.
following me everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Look at that. Okay, so I've got my monitor here, and I'm just going to slide some things over as we present the different elements of the solution. But I wanted to show you a few examples of some of the clients that we have. Kind of live examples so that you can see, get some ideas about what some of the Granicus clients are doing and how they're utilizing our solution. And so I'm sort of picking and choosing from some different examples and features from different clients. The first one that I wanted to show was a government that we're very familiar with, and that is the U.S. House of Representatives. The U.S. House of Representatives started using our solution about 1.5 years ago, and one of the things that's really nice about the Granicus solution is that it allows your public open meetings and the information that's discussed during those meetings to be completely searchable. As you mentioned before, I know that's one of the I know goals of creating useful transparency is creating a way that people can go online and can easily search specific topics that they're interested in. So rather than having a situation where you have very long meetings where you're talking about a lot of different things and you're posting those meetings on the web and sort of creating a situation where people are having to really dig and find for that information, we wanted to create a system where everything is sort of integrated and searchable in one place. So you'll notice here that I have a searching capability. So I can search things like even down to the spoken word. If I wanted to search for specific words that have been spoken during a public meeting, I could do that as well. Or I can search phrases of topics that are covered during a meeting. So in this case, I'm doing a phrase for the word environmental protection. There's been a lot of talk about that in Congress lately, particularly around the budget. And what you'll see is I get a set of results, and these results essentially include every time an item has come up during a conversation, and even down to the spoken word. I apologize. I know it's a little small there. Can I?
Let me ask a quick question. Can we project this on this screen behind us that comes down? Would it be larger and easier to read? That way we can just turn around, or maybe even. I don't think we've ever used this, so I don't know if it.
And I'm showing something else on my screen than what I'm showing on that screen. I'm sorry.
So is that a no? Okay, that's fine.
Okay, let me do this. Let me see if maybe I can increase the.
While you're doing that, let the
resolution.
record reflect that Councilmember Miller is in attendance today. Thank you.
Let me just see if I can increase my resolution here. Tell you what. Let's see here. You get Jack's kid again there for a second. Zoom. Let's see if that might help it a little bit. I'll kind of talk you through what I'm showing here as well, so you can get a good idea. What you're seeing here is kind of a search area on your public website. So it's going to be a single place where everyone can go, and you can get down to some very granular specifics of, I want to search meetings that occurred within a certain date range. I want to include searches for one word that don't include another word. So you can get very, very specific on the types of keywords that you want to search. And then once you get that search result, the sort of, I guess, magic of this that's nice is that I can click on any result. So if I click on, let's say, this meeting from March 30th, what's going to happen is that it's going to open up a new browser here.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Now, what you're referencing here, are these meetings of the committees or are these meetings House in session?
In this particular case, it's the House floor sessions. We also do two of the committees, the Committee on Ways and Means and the Committee on House Rules.
You only do two committees?
Correct. Those are the only ones that are doing that currently.
Because, I mean, the technology is fascinating, but everybody knows that almost all the decisions are made in committee.
Absolutely.
So that if you're looking for information and you're looking at a House session, you're looking at a staged presentation, not at something where anybody's making a decision, where speeches are already written in advance, and so are not spontaneous or reflect necessarily anything that's not been already vetted for public exposure.
This is probably something that you could that I would love for you to come and talk with the chairmen of the committee to get them to understand what you understand. Absolutely.
Excuse me, Dan, I don't think this that's just the contract that the House has. That doesn't mean we couldn't have this set up for all of our committees.
Yes, absolutely.
It also doesn't cover closed-door partisan caucuses that the Speaker of the House has in Congress. Couldn't pick up any of that.
Exactly. Yeah, this.
Bring you with us to our next meeting.
Right. Yes, we definitely. As was mentioned, we give you the tools so that you can utilize this however you want to. In places like the city and county of San Francisco, we have over 35 meeting bodies. All of their boards and commissions, down to their Parks and Rec board, and their Small Business Commission, utilize our solution. So this shows you what this does is show you an example of how the video will jump you to a specific point in time. So as I'm watching the video, I can click on a particular part of the conversation, and it will take me directly to the beginning of that conversation. So imagine where you have your agenda that's in front of you, and being able to click on agenda items and being able to jump to the beginning of each debate that you have, whether it be in council or in your committees. So we give you the capability of doing that. Over on the right-hand side of the screen, you would see like a minute, essentially would be like your minutes document. So if I'm looking at my minutes document and this is one particular item that's particularly interesting to me, I can actually now click into the minutes document, and that minutes document has this new dimension of video that's added to it. So while I'm reading the minutes and reading the motions and votes and that type of thing, if I really wanted to get down to the color and the conversations that are happening, I can just quickly click inside of that minutes document, and it takes me right to the point in time of the video. So this is one example. I just wanted to start out to show you kind of like what the sort of overall video experience looks like. Also, if from an accessibility perspective, you'll notice that we include things like closed captioning. So if you're doing closed captions of your meetings or you're looking to do something like that, our technology will support that very easily. We also have some other tools that are great for. It's great for what we're doing is we're trying to make sure that your content reaches very broad audiences, and so we give you some tools like the ability to trim out certain portions of your meeting. If there was a presentation or a speech or something like that you wanted to trim out and embed in your website, say for instance, to sort of highlight conversations that you're having on certain topics, we give you some very easy tools to do that as well. So this is more along the lines of, if you have a need to integrate into like social networking tools or link certain conversations into your county Facebook or Twitter site or something like that, we give you some tools to make that really easy. All right. So another example, so let's move over to This is Shelby County, Tennessee, which is, I'm from the area there, so I'm particularly proud of those guys. This kind of gives you an example of, it just shows you how much content. Now they've put every committee, every commission, their charter commission, their committees, you name it. They have put their agendas, their minutes, and whether it be audio or audio and video, they've made all that information available on their website. So again, I can click on that video, for example. And again, just wanted to show this to you as kind of something that I think would be more along the lines of kind of the experience that you would have. Again, once you see underneath the video, I can click on particular topics, take me directly there. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll notice that it's actually a minutes document. So they actually utilize our software to create their minutes. They also have our, you can kind of see it in the reflection there, but each council member has a touchscreen, which is why we brought this in, so you could just sort of see like what physically this would look like for you. And we're going to show you the interface for what this touchscreen application would look like. So what we've done here is we've created an integrated environment so that your creation of your agenda, moving that agenda information into an application that you can use live during the meeting. So you can take your motions, roll calls, votes, and everything into one system, and those systems feed into a minutes annotation tool. So whereas right now the clerk may be having to write down votes or go back and listen to recordings to try to get the specific motions and those types of things, we've integrated these systems together so that as they're using the voting system, it's actually feeding those motions and roll calls and votes into an electronic system so that the creation of the minutes becomes a lot more efficient. You've got all the data sort of being streamed into one system, and the ultimate or the final result is a situation where you have a minutes document that has the accurate motions and votes that were fed directly to the minutes from an electronic voting system. And then once again, as we mentioned before, a minutes document that I can click on and it can integrate automatically to the audio and video of that meeting.
What city is Shelby?
It's been Memphis, Tennessee. Yes, sir. So a lot of, just as a reference, as Jack mentioned before, we have approximately 800 clients. That includes everyone from, the city of New York down to a very small town of Smyrna, Tennessee, or Rockville, Maryland, for instance. So we have a number of implementations of our technology throughout the United States in all 50 states. Another one I think that would be fairly close by or relevant would be Louisville, Jefferson County, their metropolitan government. They have 26 voting members that utilize our touchscreen system, and they've been utilizing our solution for about 4 years. All right.
You have a contract with Broward County?
We do, yeah.
Can you tell me about that one?
Yeah, so Broward County utilizes our video solution, very similar to this. So actually, I can show you that real quick.
While you're pulling that up, Mr. Mowry, can you, since you were the CIO and implemented the system, can you explain the Broward County component and your experience?
Sure. We use them just for the video services. We weren't using them for the agenda prep and the agenda or the approvals. So we were using them to push video from our council, our commission meetings online, real time. We're also using them to promote things like tourism, public safety, bus schedules. We were doing videos for that type of content and pushing it out as well. So it was pretty much just the video management piece that we were using as integrated into our Broward County web pages.
In Broward County I imagine because you have so many clients across the country that it must be set up in a sort of in a menu, right?
Yeah.
Where people pick and choose what it is about the system that would help their operations.
Right, yeah, I believe you can pick and choose based on your needs. We had already had an agenda prep solution in place that we were using. So this was, the video piece was integrated into our larger web page.
Well, and it's important to add, and we'll just have this as an open discussion, that our current agenda software integrates in with this system already. So there's no, we would not need to purchase an additional or a replacement agenda software that Gene and the staff already, they're already familiar with the current application. So this is just a snap-on, effectively, to that.
This raises a lot of questions. It's fascinating. It also raises questions about control, which you've already demonstrated, of whoever is in control to edit information in order to put it on their own websites, use it as they please, selective way, so I imagine that in different communities, control over that is housed in different areas, whether it's a clerk's office or whether it's a...
Yeah, the control is an issue. I mean, anybody can create a cheap online, video recording solution to record your meetings and do with it what they want. So control on the public internet is an issue. You're right. But we never experienced that at Broward. We didn't have any issues. Not to say that that's not a potential issue. It was relatively new. I think we started like September, October of last year. Granicus directly.
I thought you were from...
No, actually, I'm with Granicus, and I was showing you some examples of some of our other clients, like Memphis.
You live in Broward County?
Actually, I live in San Francisco.
Confusing. Okay.
Yes.
So you handled the Broward County.
In addition to Shelby County, the U.S. House of Representatives, and many, many other government agencies. Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, and Mr. Brady, initially when I started talking to Joe and Gene about this, and then we went to Highland about a month ago to have a further discussion, was my concern is that as these items were being, here was my original concern, as items were on the agenda and then the chair was sending them to committee, unless we were physically documenting in our agendas who was getting what, that we might lose track of legislation that was being sent to committee for review. So the expectation is that when an item, basically I looked at this as two on-ramps. The administration has an on-ramp to get things into the current system, and council has an on-ramp. Once they're in the system, it shows up on our agenda. I'm oversimplifying, but it shows up on our agenda. That's about to the extent that our agenda software, correct me if I'm wrong, really works. That's really about it. So I was looking for something beyond that, so that when Council President Conley sent something to committee, it actually physically went to a report that would be printed out that would show all the items sent to Public Works or Health and Human Services.
Mr. Chairman, you want to be able to capture in a way that is not necessary.
Correct. Through the use of technology. So this would go further into the transparency mode, because what would happen was, once it showed up on our agenda for first reading, as an example, and then it was sent to committee, the general public basically didn't know where that piece of legislation was. So it was in committee, but they wouldn't know necessarily where to go look to see where it was, because there was right. But they wouldn't know where to find that it was sent to Human Services.
We said in the meeting.
and I'm talking about somebody who was at home or somebody who missed the meeting. So what we were looking to do was find a solution that it would say in the minutes, it would say went to Human Services, or they could go to the Human Services tab and see all the legislation that's there, or they can do a search by topic. So if they were looking for one of the children's homes as an example on a piece of legislation, they could do a keyword search and everything related to that.
And their access to this information.
From that perspective.
We're getting there, that's
Right.
for sure.
Right, from that perspective. But if you look at it from the public transparency aspect of it, that's, if you look at that as being one of many goals, a goal, that it's more transparent. On the administration side and the council side, we now have a more efficient way of operating because we can go online and look at, as an example, what's in my committee, what was assigned to my committee. You actually have the draft legislation. And what would happen further is, let's say after it's sent to committee, so it's in between first and second readings and it's in committee, the committee assignments would be, the committees would be able to track within the committee all the discussions. Of the committees are video and audio taped. And so you could actually track a piece of legislation from when it was introduced at first reading, sent to committee, all the discussions within committee, when it comes out of committee to go back on the council agenda for second reading, while it's sitting there waiting for third reading unless we do an immediate passage, you can see the entire legislative cycle as it relates to that piece of legislation.
I think the part that interests me the most, although it's all, because we have a very staff, very large county,
Mhm.
possible for us. I think it's part of it.
Right, and this apparent list does answer that and address that question equally. I'm not saying one's more important than the other. I think if we look at the ultimate outcomes of transparency and efficiencies, this accomplishes both at the same time, one without sacrificing the other. And so that was kind of my initial, thought as to why we should go down this road, so we can track it, not only for the public, but for us.
Follows the other.
Correct. 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 And then, the voting module, which they'll talk about the voting and the searchability. I mean, some of the other things that we talked about in the meeting, the availability as an example. I don't mean to steal anyone's thunder here from Granicus, but the availability that as we're reviewing our agendas at home as an example in advance of the meetings when they're published, if there's an item that we wish to speak on at the meeting, we can actually push a button to reserve time for us to speak on an item on the agenda. And when it comes up on the screens, the chair will know that Councilmember Brady already has reserved time to speak on that agenda item.
I think we may be too small a legislative body for that, the need for that kind of complexity, but I see.
Okay. All right. I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
Oh,
so
no,
I'm just-
absolutely. No, you're taking the words right out of my mouth, essentially. Yeah, so it is. It's very much a situation where what I was showing you examples of were examples of how you can take this content and make it and turn it into a useful public record. That is very easy for people to gain access to and to understand what's going on in the legislative process. But you also touched on a really good point, which is it has to get in there somehow, right? You have to have an efficient means of getting the information into a system so that people can have an efficient way to get the information
in our
out.
case, with a very small staff.
Exactly, yeah. So small staff, larger expectations with smaller staff is what we're seeing all across the country as well.
We have
So
staff of less than a half a dozen people, a county of over a 1.2 or something.
that's an amazing challenge.
Yeah.
and that's something that I think that we can creating efficiencies within the legislative process is what we are. That's something that we feel like we do very well. And so to that end, what I can do is show you. Let's just jump right over to an example of this is an interface that we have that's called our voting. It's our electronic voting solution, and what it does is it essentially puts a touchscreen application in front of. Now this is happening live during the meeting, so each person or each council member would have this application, and it would help you, guide you through your meeting by doing a few things. First of all, you'll notice that there are three major buttons along the bottom of the application. The first one is called On the Floor, which we're going to get to in just a moment. It essentially tells you what's happening right now in this part of, what is the current item that we're discussing? What's the current motion that's on the floor? Who's requested to speak on items? It's going to help you understand all those things. In addition, we have an agenda tab. So as you're walking into the meeting, you have your paper agendas that are in front of you, and we have a goal of being less reliant on paper and giving you some more electronic options, so that you can, for instance, scroll through your agenda. And let's say for this one particular agenda, as I'm walking into the meeting, I want to go ahead and let the chairman know that I want to request to speak on this item. So this gives me the capability of just kind of scrolling through my agenda as I'm walking in and say, I know that I want to go ahead and talk on these items. So let's go ahead and get my name into the queue. So even before the meeting starts, you have that capability of doing that. I can also, if I wanted to look at particular documents, staff reports or plat maps or contracts or other reports, I can do that very easily just by clicking on the agenda item and going and reviewing those documents electronically. So it just gives you a good supporting mechanism so that you can review things that are happening during the meeting, before and during the meeting itself. So the main feature of the application is how this application is integrated with a live minutes annotation tool. So you notice that as what I'm doing here is you'll notice in the upper left-hand corner there it just says call to order, and then it says Pledge of Allegiance, and then it says silent meditation. So you'll notice that the application is guiding you through the agenda as you're taking up each item on the agenda. So if I were to go to my approval of minutes, you would see the approval of minutes there. Now, if someone were wanting to, let's say, do roll call here, or that. Let me just get this set up here.
Oh, I was just thinking about how these things are always fascinating, and both Councilman Miller and I begin to have a system not as sophisticated as this, but on our desks, access to items. Some of the functions are for larger bodies. Some of this technology. County Council.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I'm just thinking of some examples. Actually, the council that helped us build this was the city of Gilroy, California, which is, if you don't know, it's like the garlic capital of the world, I think. They're a 5-member council. We sat down with their mayor and their council members, and we tried to help them become a more electronic. And so that's kind of where we got our start, because we're a Bay Area company. I'm sorry? They sell a lot, yeah. They're like the garlic capital. I don't know why I do that, but I'm from Nashville, so I don't know why I did that. I am originally. I don't know if you can. Really confusing. Yeah, from Nashville, lived in New Orleans, moved to San Francisco. Yeah, so it actually started with smaller councils, and then it grew to county boards like Shelby County that utilizes the electronic voting system, and then it grew further to state legislatures like the Virginia, Tennessee, Arkansas, are legislative clients of ours, and then, of course, the U.S. House of Representatives. So we actually started at the municipal level and kind of grew our way up. So our roots are really in the municipal government. So if you want to, yeah, so what you'll see here is that, simple motion, we want to approve the minutes. It gives you a button where you can click and it motions. Now, the reason why this is important.
I'm sorry, this, what we're looking at here is what a council member's screen would look like.
Yes, absolutely. It would be what would be on your touch screen in front of you. So you would just click, you would just touch the screen to say you're in motion. And the reason why this is helpful is because, as I mentioned before, as you're touching that screen and you're motioning and someone else comes in and they second, it's very similar to you sort of expressing, verbally what you're doing here. Let me go ahead and mark a seconder here.
You wouldn't even have to be at the meeting.
Well, you do have to be in front of your touch screen, which is at the dais. So. You have to hit the button. That's for sure. Well, I do actually have a story behind that I can talk to you about a little later on. So what it does is, so the reason why this is important is because as you're motioning and seconding, the clerk is not having to listen to and respond to the oral and write down those responses. This is actually feeding that information directly into their minutes document live in real time. So it's creating a lot of efficiencies there, first of all, because the clerk can just sit there and watch it on the screen and kind of watch it unfold. Once it's recorded, so let's go ahead. So there is a step where the clerk looks at it and says, okay, I want to record that motion. So there's a screen that you're not seeing that I'm using, which is the clerk's interface. So I'm going to record that motion. And you see when I record that motion, it just brings that information and says, okay, now we have a motion on the floor. The reason why this is important is because you probably have been in situations where you have, okay, now I've recorded a motion and now I want to amend that motion and now I want to amend the amendment to that motion. And it can get pretty confusing pretty fast. So what this does is this ultimately will tell you if I'm confused and I want to know what is the motion that we're voting on, this system will tell you.
But this wouldn't become the exclusive way that you make motions. You could still verbally make motions.
Absolutely.
So you might be quicker that way than you are.
Well, that's something that we could work out with you when we're implementing the system. The clerk does have the capability to do everything that the members do. But what part of our training is actually where we sort of act as pages and we can kind of guide you through, it's a combination of both technology and communication. We actually have a training with the chairman and the clerk where we sit down and we kind of decide on language that you would want to, verbal language that you would actually use during the meeting. Madam Clerk, please record the vote. Or
thinking about how the public understands what's going on.
Exactly. It's all a part of this. You hit it right on the head. It's a combination of utilizing technology to help you be more efficient, but it's also helping you helping the meeting process in general to be more following rules of order, communicating well during the meeting, so that when the public is watching, they also know what's going on. In addition to this screen here, we also have a public display that will also communicate to the public what is going on at this particular time during the meeting, what motions are on the floor, what do the vote results look like. So there's actually another screen that's separate from this one that would be made available to everyone in the room and everyone that's online, so that they can actually follow along with what you're doing as well. So once I've made recorded that in motion, let's go ahead and let's say, Madam Clerk. We don't want that person to be absent. Madam Clerk, please record the vote. And so the clerk would hit a button that says Start Voting, and pops up on everyone's screen 3 buttons: yes, no, abstain, or whatever you would want those buttons to be. Yep. And if that person had been marked, you'll notice that if a person had been marked absent, the system would automatically know that that person is absent, and it would just log that on the screen. So, so again, a lot of system automation and integration that makes it easy to use. So yeah, so you get the big buttons in front of you. Please record your vote. I'm going to record. I want to approve the motion to accept the minutes, which is it's a very easy motion to do. And then I can just record that vote, and you'll see that it just brings you to a page that kind of summarizes what just happened. So that's going to stay on your screen for a couple of seconds, and then you're going to move to the next item on your agenda. And so as I move to different items on the agenda, let's go ahead and take up an item here. So you notice that I activated an item in which there were speakers that were listed in the list of folks who wanted to speak. And you'll also notice that as that item comes up, if other folks want to speak on that item, I can just add their names to that list. And all they're doing is they're just hitting that button saying that I want to request to speak. So it looks like on this item we have 3 council members who want to speak. As a chairman, I can look at everyone who has requested to speak and say, okay, I want to call that person to speak. And all that does is essentially allows you to manage a queue of speakers so that you can call them one by one.
Now, in the legislature, when we wanted to speak and we would touch a light, there were lights that we would touch to indicate to the President of the Senate or the Speaker of the House that we would like to speak, or in the council, we would raise our microphones up so you could see a raised microphone.
Mm-hmm.
Decide at some point, because something in the course of the conversation has happened and somebody's asked the question you wanted to ask, or something that the issue you were interested in has been resolved, or you decide you've changed your mind because you thought better of what it was that you were going to say, you would also turn your light off or pull your thing down. I imagine that you can do the same thing. You can withdraw your name from notice to speak.
Absolutely. So the button right there that I'm clicking on would be the request to speak button. And it's a little small there, but it actually says withdraw request. So if during the course of the conversation you no longer want to be in that queue, you would just hit the button again, and it essentially removes your name from the queue. So everything that you can do in the system, you can undo as well. While the vote is live, you can change it, but once they've recorded that vote, then it's set in stone. So just real quick, so what I'll do, let me just take up another item real quick so that you can see what that looks like. So I double-clicked on the item, and as you'll notice that it says motion to approve here. So the clerk does have the capability, if a council member verbalizes, I would like to move to approve item 7 on the agenda. They can actually capture that, and you would just hit the motion button. Once you do that, then let's go ahead and record that motion and start up and say, Madam Clerk, please record the vote. And then you would come in and hit your button for whether you are for or against the item.
May I ask a question? Okay. To our presenter, in making a motion, sometimes the motion, particularly if you're in committee, is more than simply to approve. For example, the motion might be that we recommend to approve and recommend that the item be considered for passage under second reading suspension at the next council meeting.
Yes, sir.
How would something added like that be incorporated?
Very good question. Thank you, council member. The system does give you the capability of recording the details of the motion live as it happens. There's a couple of things that you can do in this from a system perspective. Sometimes it happens really fast. We didn't want to create a situation for the clerk where they had to or the system required you to document the level, the very, very low level detail of that motion, because we're actually recording that audio video of that, and that recording gets used after the meeting for the clerk to be able to come back and sort of clean up and detail those motions. Now, that being said, if I do wanted to approve a motion with the following 7 conditions attached, I could definitely do that. And I can just record that in the system here. So once I choose my mover and my seconder, you'll notice that I have 2 tabs here. I have a motion in progress and a motion on the floor. So there could be a motion that's sort of being created right now but hasn't been, that's been verbalized. We're looking for a second. It hasn't been recorded in the system. But I can actually see the detail of that motion, of the motion that's being worked on. So that says right there in detail, it says approve a motion with the following 7 conditions attached. Once I go and I record that motion, now it's actually officially been moved. That's the motion that's on the floor. So you'll see the motion to approve a motion with the following 7 conditions attached. The motion is to approved. It was moved by Brady, seconded by Greenspan. So it does give you, the technology does give you the capability to do as you have mentioned, and that's something that we can work with the clerk to determine how much level of detail they want to be able to capture in real time. Does that answer your question?
So what we're saying is we don't have to specifically type, if there's a motion on the floor and the motion's been amended, we don't have to specifically type into the system at that time the amended motion, as long as it's presented in some form, and then there's a note made that there's been a floor amendment, either in writing or orally, and then that becomes the active amendment, and then the clerk would go in after the meeting to tidy up the minutes to reflect the actual on the floor verbal or written amendment. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep, Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chairman, to the presenter, there's some discussion among members and staff of putting together a standard set of motions that would cover most situations that arise. And is there some way that these standard motions could be programmed into the system so that instead of having to type out the whole motion when one of these comes up, you have a menu where you can just hit a button or something like that?
Yes, sir. Again, a very excellent question. The software, we know that we realize, and our primary user is our clerks, municipal clerks from across the country. And one of the feedback that we got from them most was they want to be able to do things like record a member's name, record a motion that's expanded, but they want to be able to do it with shortcut keys and like a shortcut menu. So our software actually gives you the capability, and I'm gonna put this on the screen, and I know you're not gonna be able to really read it because it's very small. But essentially, it's all drop down and menu based. So we actually sit down and work with you and determine what those typical motions would be, and we store them in our software, and you can access them by hitting like a Control-G or a Control-H or just typing the first couple of letters of that motion, and it would expand that to include the detail of the motion. We do that for your names as well, so that they can just type in DM, say for instance, to have it record your full council member Dale Miller. So a lot of shortcut ways and a lot of configurations that we put into the system, and we can thank our municipal clerks across the country for helping us with that as well. Does that answer your question?
Real quick, and then Council President Conley has a question, but like for example, the motions we make to suspend the rules, based on various circumstances, those would be programmed in. So when that comes up, you would push the hotkey, it would show up on the screen, it'd be read into the minutes orally, it's there written, and then a motion, then the vote could be taken. That would be an example of.
Correct. You'll see, like, what I'm doing is I'm actually flipping through some of the things that I have just recorded in a motion to adjourn, a motion to amend, a motion to recess. So any of those things, any of those typical motions will
Executive
record in the
session.
system. Absolutely.
Council President Conley, you had a question?
What is the average amount of time it takes to train? Like we meet every twice a month. So I mean, you would have to fly someone here, 2 or 3 times to, to train people on this and.
So what we typically do is there are a couple models for training. One is a kind of a train the trainer situation, where we would identify someone, a staff person within the county, who would essentially become the primary advocate of our solution. So what we do want to make sure is we want to make sure that once we will come in and do on-site training for you, but once we walk away, we want to make sure that there is somebody within the county who has that knowledge and can, as new staff come on and new membership come on and.
But then what about as you change the system? Do you have to send the person back to retrain it?
No. So everything that we do about 90% of all our implementation remotely. So we can remote into our systems. I have an application where I can log into any touchscreen system that we have and the hundreds of implementations that we have. So a lot of times it's just picking up the phone and saying, we want to make an adjustment to this configuration, and that's working.
So how do I know that you don't go in and when I make this gaffe and whisper something, that you don't go in and delete something or?
Yeah, I mean, that's something
Is there a
that.
security factor? I mean, you can go in and delete something or?
Absolutely. There's an audit trail of every single thing that's done. And the other thing that we do is we work within your county's IT guidelines for security access. So we will make sure that, we've worked in 800 different IT environments all across the country, and so we've seen a lot of different.
Can you create this image of me when I'm not here? Or?
No.
Yeah.
No. Security is something that, we've had to pass, federal FSMA compliance for security and those types of things. So that's something that we're very, very keenly aware of. We will, typically what we see is that in most environments there are security IT policies and data policies that are in place that we have to agree to even before being allowed to start those projects.
And then we would pay X number of dollars for the system, and then we're paying like a maintenance fee or something every year?
Yes, ma'am. So
as long as we keep it, we're paying some kind of a fee? Yes,
ma'am. It is we refer to it as like software as a service, where it's essentially like a monthly fee that pays for the license, it pays for all the maintenance, it pays for any upgrades that are made. We have all of our clients that we have. Whenever there's new features or enhancements that come out, you get those as part of the package. It's sort of like signing up with like an email system, where you pay like a certain amount per month or $10 a month or something.
Or it's like a book club that keeps sending them and charging you. Or like we got to buy all the monitors. We have to buy all the equipment.
Yeah, that's included in what we'll do is we'll present a proposal that'll include all of the hardware that's included, all the professional services, so training. We actually do have, as I mentioned before, we have training where we will come and have a one-on-one with you. That one-on-one typically lasts about 10 minutes, and it'll get you familiar with utilizing the software. Then that same person who would train you actually will stay with you during your public meeting. So if you can imagine, like as I mentioned before, there's like a page that's sort of standing behind you, if you as you're using the system, if you have a question, you just raise your hand. We would come up and we would support you. So there's a support period, like an on-ramp onboarding support period that we would help you through.
So you buy this equipment, you buy the package, and you're paying this maintenance, and then at the end of election season, everybody in the legislature gets voted out. I mean, are you stuck with this, or you've been into a contract with the governmental agency?
Yes. So contract terms are all something that would be negotiable based off of what the county is looking for. So we see anything from like an annual agreement to like a 90-day out clause. So we're very flexible on those terms. We do have, I'll say, that's not something that we particularly well. What I want to say is that our retention rate of our clients is over 99%. We've had in our history, we've been very fortunate to have a very small handful of clients that have chosen Granicus and then decided for one reason or another that they didn't want to remain with them. That being said, we're confident in our clients' ability to be successful with our solution. That's something that's very negotiable for us.
Madam President, what I would say is in my brief research that I've done on the cost of this system, it was a fraction of what I thought it was going to be. And I know, in Broward, I don't believe we don't purchase the software, we just pay a license fee. We don't ever want to own the software because then we're responsible for the maintenance and they'll never sell us the source code. So it's just there's some initial hardware cost. That's true, unless that's absorbed into the license fee. I don't know that question. I don't know the answer to that question. But I was surprised how inexpensive it was, especially for the inexpensive, especially with the efficiencies that we gain, speaking specifically internally to the efficiencies, let alone the transparency and the soft costs that we cannot identify for the community, be it feeling as if there's transparency in government.
Thank you.
Was there?
We were just sidebar. But I can see that one of the things that would be beneficial, what you guys don't know is that our resident parliamentary expert is Councilman Miller, and this would make us much less,
Miller
dependent
dependent.
to make sure our meetings were, functioned.
Starting to get that idea.
He's the guy who it does this.
I was starting to get that idea from the questions that I was getting from the council member. That's the other thing too is rules of order and Robert's rules and those types of things. That's something that we have built into the solution so that again, no matter where you are, you can do things. It helps you guide through things like the fact that a motion to adjourn is an overriding motion versus other things. So it's aware of the parliamentary procedure.
So we'll have less arguing between ourselves about what's appropriate because
It'll help you. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm.
Question.
No, they don't. That's the idea.
Yeah, how does she know how I voted?
You figured it out.
Can you show the public interface?
I can, yeah.
There's a whole public interface side that'll be on those monitors.
I mean, everybody has to sit there with a laptop with
No.
It'll be on these monitors.
If you could switch back over to my screen here, what I'll do is I'll show an example of this. So let me just rearrange things a little bit here. So let's.
What he's going to show you is he's going to show you a snapshot of exactly what you're going to be able to see while you're here.
Yeah. So.
Again, this is all completely customizable to how you decide. Correct.
Yes. So we have an application that you would actually put up on your screens inside the chamber. And also this information is available to the public live in real time as well. So, as you're activating items, the video player actually tells you that the public is watching at home. It tells you the current item that they're currently considering.
Everybody's
I
staying
think
home
there's,
now.
yeah, no, I don't think, yeah, I don't know. We haven't necessarily seen that momentum happen, but we've certainly seen a situation where, those, very busy professionals who aren't able to make it at a meeting because of the time in which it occurs, they can, now you're giving them a means to participate in a way that they couldn't before. That's something that's a very real situation where people have, families and careers and they want to be able to participate and they have something to say, but they haven't been able to do that before. That's definitely something that we're very proud to be able to have said that we've been able to do to a lot of folks in the community.
Audience would definitely be a broader audience, county this big.
Correct.
Audience would be, times or would come down here, park the car, and walk into this building and attend the meeting.
Yeah, no, then you've also brought up another thing that's discussed a lot, and that's green initiatives. You're talking about driving your car down to a meeting or whatever. We've seen a lot of our communities that have been able to identify this as kind of a green initiative as well. So there's definitely there's the getting the information out. And there's also that part that there's also a citizen participation module that you can also add to the solution that helps you get feedback from the citizens as well, which is something that we can discuss. But this public display.
Real quick, excuse me, my light went off. Majid wishes to speak.
No, and I apologize for and some of these may already have been addressed at different points in the presentation, but just a couple of questions. You showed earlier the items on the agenda and how you click on the item on the agenda, it directly takes you to the video for that portion. Who does the link? Is that done by the clerk, or is that something that's done by you as part of the maintenance process?
You mean the linking to the documents, et cetera?
No,
or?
it's if somebody is at home, they search something, and the list comes up, and then they click on it, it goes to the video. Who does the linking between that part and the video?
So first of all, the data gets loaded into the system. So your existing agenda that you have for your meeting, that doesn't have to get retyped in.
The question that I say, okay, it goes to minute 32.4 in the video.
I can answer that. What happens is, where we're going is, once the information's entered in the agenda, and as the agenda's as the meeting is being conducted, the video and audio are being synced with the agenda. So when a motion is made, it passes, they move on to the next item. Effectively, the system integrates in the audio and video into the current system by design. There's no human mechanism that needs to do that. They all sync together.
Syncing instantaneously.
Yeah, by using the system and pressing the buttons to motion and record motions and record votes, like I was showing you in the application, that's actually creating timestamps in the video live in real time. So you're not actually having to have somebody else come in and do that work.
The other question, is there any voice recognition capability in terms of committee meetings, or if somebody's looking for the transcripts, is that even...
Yeah, currently we're not doing like a speech-to-text technology. We do have the capability of integrating transcription and closed caption services.
And then the third question, I don't know who the appropriate person is, but when you've been retained before, and I don't mean the U.S. House, but let's say Broward County or any of the state counties or municipalities, how has that process happened? Has it been through an RFB, an RFP? Was it sole source? What was the mechanism under which you were retained?
So we've seen all of those situations for sure. I would say in the course of Granicus's history, we've seen about 80% sole source. The reason being is because of the uniqueness of the combination of technologies that we provide and the uniqueness of both government transparency and government efficiency. But we also have seen RFI, RFP responses, which probably covers like another 15% of the work that we do. We also see cooperative, I just mentioned this, cooperative agreements. If there are other agencies in your agency that have gone through a bid process and you don't want to have to go through that same bid process and you have that sort of cooperative agreement in place, we've seen that utilized as well.
This may be a tool, this may be a tool for regional collaboration as we go down the line to be able to offer to municipalities and townships and villages throughout the county to be able to piggyback on our agreement and provide this service to them. And I know that County Executive Fitzgerald's working on an internet type of platform environment, sharing environment. This may be a feature to offer.
No, and the only reason I ask about that is if it does get to that point, just in terms of logistic. But yeah, do you know, and I'm not trying to tell you anything about your competitors, but do you know about how many similar providers are on the market?
Yeah, it's so what we see in the market is you have webcasting providers, and then you have like legislative content providers, and you have electronic voting providers, and then you have agenda automation providers, and minutes automation providers, and imaging providers, but there aren't companies that do all of those things together in a seamless system, and so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
And I apologize for asking questions. I was just.
Can you continue on with the public's view, what the public would see?
Yes.
Because you've demonstrated what council would see, but what would the public see on it? What would an agenda item look like? How would you go through an agenda?
Yeah, so let me just let me go ahead and record this item here so I can bring it back. Again, the interface would be customizable, so you can make it essentially look and include any information that you would want. Let's go ahead and let's click on a new item here. So as I click on an item, let's see a resolution. Let's click on that resolution. So you can have the display say, consideration of a resolution of the council, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let's say now that I'd like to entertain a motion to approve this. Do I have a motion? Motion made by Councilmember Miller. Do I have a second? Motion made by Councilmember Connolly. And let's go ahead and record that. So once you see that, now it's saying there's a motion in progress. So it is alerting the public that there's a motion on the floor. We open up for discussion. Let's say, for instance, that there is a speaker from the public that wishes to get up and speak. I can very quickly either choose from a list, or I can type that speaker's name in, call that speaker, and then give them 3 minutes to have their discussion. So it also acts as a speaker timer system. So you notice that I have a speaker myself who is getting up, and I have the opportunity to speak for 3 minutes on this particular item. So it times you. It will warn you 30 seconds before your time is over by turning yellow, and it will hit you over the head right at, and it will make a big loud noise at the end of that period to warn you that it's time to go. Once you have that, once we go through that process and you go through the number of speakers that get up and speak, again, this information is available to the public, so the public will also know what's going on. Then I can move forward. So now if there are no more speakers, any council members want to give any final thoughts, you could do that. Now we would now like to go to a vote. Council members, please cast your vote. And the system gives you the capability of showing the votes live as they happen, or you can actually save that until the vote is complete. But what you see there is in real time, it's calculating the votes for you. And then I just record that vote. So now it's telling me that the motion passes 8-4, and this is how the votes occurred. So again, in real time, as they're using the system, it's also alerting the public, alerting the members of the room exactly what's going on.
I actually like the way you've got that set up. We'll have to change the rules because I voted twice, so.
Oh yeah, your name wasn't there twice. Sorry about that.
The point, though, is and my preference, and this is an off-the-subject discussion, though, would be not to show the votes as they're being cast, but to hold till all the votes are cast, then display the vote total. That's just my preference. If we went that route, Gene would be the only one that would be able to see, or the clerk who has not cast a vote, and say, for example, Mr. Miller, please cast your vote, if there are only 10 votes that have currently been cast. If not, obviously it would go live, and then we would see who's not voted, and to remind them to vote. But,
Yeah, so what you see on and very good point, the system is very configurable to match what your process is, to make sure that we aren't, that we aren't doing anything that are outside the rules of the council, of the meeting bodies. You also see on the screen there, again, very highly configurable. If I wanted to include that detail that Councilmember Miller was talking about, where I wanted to actually get down to the level of detail of the motion language, you could actually post that on the display as well. So if you wanted to take the time to make sure that you've accurately captured what that motion is or what that action is that they're working on, you could actually do that in the system, post it to the screen, so that everyone in the room is very aware of what's being discussed. But it gives you that flexibility to do as much or as little or anything in between to help to meet your meeting efficiency needs. All right. Yes, sir. You can. It's like switching back and forth between videos and presentations and that type of thing. Like a picture-in-picture? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. There was an interesting point that was just made during our work sessions, as an example. When Mr. Applebaum comes and speaks and he gives a video presentation, that can be incorporated into this actual system. So someone at home can actually see the presentation either live as it's being presented or in a video playback environment. So Gene doesn't have to now get paper copies of the presentation and scan them to get them included, or receive a thumb drive with the data or have the information sent. It'll automatically be recorded off of here, off of our initial system, and be included as part of the official record at that point in time in which it's happening. So Dan, or Councilman Brady, to get back to your point, it once again saves some efficiencies within staff because they no longer have to chase down the information to include it in the record. It's already in the record at the point it's happening.
All right. Well, as far as giving an overview of the software, I just kind of summarize what I was hoping to accomplish was sort of at first show you the public side of that and what it looks like. If you could switch back over real quick, I just wanted to quickly show just kind of as a summarize of this. This is the Broward County Video Central that was created. As you had mentioned earlier, Councilmember Brady, the solution is very modular, very configurable. We would work with you to determine which features make the most sense for you and which features you may want to consider for the future. The way that Broward County started was they really focused on the community content aspect of it, outreach videos, ways for them to essentially create like like an online center for citizens to go to. So bless you. So they can provide sort of community educational information. It also, if you have like a live channel, you could also include that, embed live video. Mayor's press conferences and those types of things. And so that's something that is a very useful part of this tool. So what I want to do is show you both the public access portion of this, and the government transparency piece, the citizen education piece. It's all included in the Granicus platform. And then what we did was we moved on to the internal parts, the internal part of the application that gives you the capability for the members and the clerks and the staff that are involved in this, some efficiency tools so that they can pull all this information into one system, so that the time that it gets to the public, it's presented to them in a very useful and quite honestly, video-centric is important today. A lot of people are relying on, when I go out to CNN or something like that, I get my news a lot of times from video. And so it's kind of a nod in that direction too, giving the public access to public open meeting content that includes video, which is something that we're getting very used to today.
I want to thank you, Joe or Gene, you were with us at Highland. Was there anything that we missed that?
I'm pretty sure that covered it for me. That was
Okay. Gene. Okay. Any questions any more questions from the committee? Well, the question came up regarding cost. Is that, I think we're a pilot for Ohio, so I think it's free, right?
That word has come
I'm
up so
looking
many
right at
times
Tom.
today.
I'm looking at Tom on that one. How would we, obviously, I mean, the decision would need to be made if we're going to RFP this or put it out for bid, but what type, obviously it's modular based. I was tongue-tied there. So obviously what we would require would be, what we would request would, and the price would be contingent upon what we selected. Can you give us a ballpark and all on, I mean, I don't know how, we never even talked about pricing, so I don't even know how your pricing structure works. I know Broward County's program was about $25,000 a year, so about $2,000 a month, but it didn't have a lot of the features that we would want to have. But using that as a base, and there may be some things that they did that we might not even be ready for yet. I don't know, was that, well, they didn't have touchscreen monitors. So we're just talking ballpark here.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yeah.
just saw it, just being
So we don't step on ourselves.
no,
Yes.
I just being very careful in terms of, my understanding of what's happening. I think this is exactly the
Okay.
council members' understanding is that this is a promotional presentation at this point in terms of for the council members to understand what's on the market, the different products that are on the market. You're obviously very free to ask about any questions as to price because you're trying to get an idea of the idea, what you're trying to get is out there. If the determination is that the process has to be an RFP or an RFB or anything of that nature, obviously any decision making is going to be the byproduct of the process that we go through at that point. This is more of an informational. I just wanted to make sure that the record is clear that there is nobody here has any predeterminations or predispositions as to what we do. That will be the byproduct of whatever process happens.
Mr. Brady?
I appreciate the law director's comments, of course. I think that if the chairman agrees that if we could just be provided with whatever's kosher to provide us with in terms of the contracts with other major municipalities, that we would have a pretty good idea what we're talking about.
I agree with that. I think we would, do you have a product offering? We would need to kind of smorgasbord this to figure out exactly what we wanted in order for you to provide us with some scenarios.
Yeah.
Correct?
So actually, I'm going to pop back on my screen kind of the modular. And so what we can do here is I'll just quickly cover like how we modularize the solution, and then we can provide you with some information around that to kind of summarize what we've talked about here. Let me just bring this screen back up so you can see it. This is basically and Jack showed this before. These are kind of the pieces, parts to the solution that you can choose from. So so all of the public access, webcasting piece of that would be what we would call the open platform. The government transparency suite is all the searchability, the live indexing, the analytics that you would get off of your webcasting solution. The meeting efficiency portion is the minutes annotation tool. The legislative management suite is the electronic voting system that we just talked about. And then the citizens participation suite, which we didn't get to show you, but it's an online feedback form for citizens. So what we would do is we would essentially be able to provide you, and because we work with government agencies, we have a standard price list. It's available to the public. We can provide that for you for what each of the components would be. Then in addition to that, so these are the software licenses. There would be some hardware costs and some professional services. Integrations with products like the Highland product would be included in those professional services as well. And then we can provide some level of detail on that as well.
Okay, great. Mr. McCloof, does that does that kind of give us at least?
Yeah, and I don't even have a problem with them going into pricing generally as to what it's out there. My only issue is I just want to make sure that we're not here negotiating
No,
a
no.
contract or anything. That this is generally what these things cost on the market. I'm comfortable with that. I just don't want to be tailoring specific, needs for the counties in this process. That's all I'm saying.
Right, yeah, I appreciate that. And I think the protocol, I would suspect, and although we haven't talked about this, would be probably a recommendation out of this committee. It'd have to come to us in a proposal. I guess a recommendation out of this committee how to proceed. I'm unclear as to the exact protocol, since council doesn't have the.
I would think the protocol says that we've been advised that one of these systems exists, and then we would have to go out to a marketplace and see all of the systems that would be available to us. Something of that nature?
Yeah, or, I mean, the only hesitation I have is I haven't even had a chance to look in terms of this and whether this is sole source, and even if we go through what the process that you go through. So I would, the way I see this is that this was a presentation as to what's on the market. I would recommend against taking any action today, and obviously we will be very happy to discuss anything within the confines of the attorney-client privilege, but, I just, we always have presentations before council. We have a presentation here today, and then the next step will be decided once we're able to see, if council wants to move in that direction, what the proper mechanism to do that is.
But I would suspect that I would suspect, this is actually the first time I think we've been in an environment like, with something like this, where just assuming we want to move forward with this, we would have to go through the executive, or do we have the authority? This is an all-encompassing county operation. I would think we would want executive support if we were with whatever product, with this type of solution.
But your comments assume that we want to go forward. I'm not assuming that I want to invest any money out here. We got hungry children and stuff. I'm not sure that whatever it costs that we have the money, we're getting along pretty well right now. I'm not totally convinced that we should go forward. I mean,
I'm just trying to get a kind of a framework, and maybe this is not the appropriate time to discuss this. I think that's what Mr. Nani is telling me by his nodding, but Mr. Miller?
I also want to comment, but.
Mr. Miller?
Mr. Chairman, one of the advantages of our new system of government is supposed to be to have an integrated information system for the whole county, in which we have one person as CIO who's now been recommended, been appointed, and so I think one of the questions we're going to have to ask is this something that would be incorporated into some other things that the administration would want to do for other parts of the county in relation to information systems? So I just put that out there for consideration.
Mr. Nani?
The other thing that I should have mentioned earlier is that the way that we're proceeding with the procurement function is there's really three components of the way that things are approved, and we probably want it to funnel into one system so the public can see exactly what's being approved. And that is, there's the just items that the executive can approve on his own. There's the items that are going to go through the new Board of Control, and then there's items that are passed by council. And it would be great if the conversations took place with the executive, so all of these things are funneling to one public place. So as a citizen, or even as a county employee, you don't need to go to multiple sources to see where their county dollars are being spent and used. Just a thought there.
Very good. Okay. So we'll work with Mr. Mowry on some form of collaboration here. And obviously, you're right. I mean, there's been no decision by council. So, but we don't even know all the components yet. This, as Mr. McClure said, this is clearly a presentation of technology that's out there. Not sounding prejudiced to the discussion. If it's good enough for the U.S. House of Representatives and 8 state legislatures and 800 other municipalities, I would suspect that there very well may not be another complete solution out there. But with that being said, we'll go through whatever proper protocol there is. Mr. Brady, did you have
Just that I think that Councilman Miller's comments are on target, that this is the beginning of a discussion that involves more than the council. I'm, though, at this point, pretty narrowly focused on how it can help the council do its work if you know, whatever kind of a system we might be able to find. And so I would be interested in getting, you know, feedback from the staff, the clerk, and the chief of staff, and others on the staff about what they've taken away from this since they were here, and how they specifically think they can help our operation, not excluding anything else.
What would it be advisable then to ask our chief of staff and the clerk to meet with Mr. Mowry to discuss what would be possible, what would be acceptable?
Well, I think that's a discussion for us to have, you know, with in another context.
Okay, all right. All right, very good. Yes,
Yeah.
Mr. McClure.
No, all I just wanted to say is I'm not trying to, the only thing I'm saying is I don't know what the answer is. I'm not trying to say that it has to be done X way or Y way. All I'm saying is it's something that I haven't even had a chance to investigate, and I would just caution against taking any official action or doing anything without giving us an opportunity. At the end of the day, what process will be, obviously, we'll look into it and will advise us to the proper methodology as to how to go about any of this. I just, literally, the true answer is I don't know.
No, absolutely. Well, I don't think the expectation today was for us to sign a contract by 3 o'clock. I think it was just to gain information, understand what the options are out there, and determine internally, number one, do we want to move forward with this type of, whether it's this product or this type of application? How is it integrated countywide? And what's the benefit to county operations internally and transparency with the general public? So that was the sole initial intent. I believe we'd like to know some of the other cost parameters, but obviously we've got to do some work on our end first.
Yeah, and so what we can provide for you guys, kind of as a typical roadmap, again, leveraging those 800 clients that we've worked with in the past, make this not an event and make it more of a process, is basically summarize exactly what we've talked about here today, our previous conversations, and then send that over in a formalized document to give you kind of a roadmap of this is the typical way that you would go down the path as far as implementation. And then you guys can have your internal review, and then we'll set up a further discussion if you so choose.
Okay, great. Are there any other questions? Mr. Ivory, anything from the executive? No, okay, very good. Well, I want to thank Jack, I want to thank you and to everybody for coming and giving us this presentation. I think it was very helpful. I don't want to give any personal opinion, so I'll just leave it at that. Any other discussions or anything from the council or from the committee on this presentation? No, well, thank you for coming today.
Appreciate it. Thank you for you guys' time.
Absolutely. Is there any, we'll move along the agenda. Any new business before this committee? I don't have any. Any public comment? Additional public comment? Okay, Ms. Mayor? Would you just come on up so we can get it recorded? I'm sorry.
Is it fair, this is an impression I've gathered from the presentation, is it fair to say that nowhere does your company have a system that tracks contractors and lobbyists and financial disclosure forms and conflict of interest and who gave campaign finance contributions to whom, etc., the kind of following the money that you have to do in order to enforce ethics possible or track down possible ethics violations. Is it possible that your company has ever done that as part of your website, or is that, it sounds to me as if you don't do that?
It is the latter. There are other systems that are out there that do provide financial disclosure information specific to legislation that's being introduced and routed through approval process, and the impact that those processes have on the community budget. And our system essentially ties into those other systems. So
It's more legislative management.
yes, there are legislative management and process management and financial transparency type solutions that we have worked with very closely in the past. I think it may be more of a conversation that that the folks from Highland and OneLink could assist you with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And any other public comment? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, is there a second? All right, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it, we're adjourned. And I will, we don't have another meeting scheduled, but I will notify the committee when there is one.